Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Got another weekend recap. This time, I did pretty well, and Blake did okay. But let's get into it. Cleveland versus Minnesota. They end up splitting that series, so that goes down as a tie for us. Baltimore and Tampa. Baltimore takes two of three. Not really any surprise there. Texas and New York. Texas needs to get going. They're actually starting to stall a little bit. It hasn't been a great season overall, but. They had an opportunity to come back and really be in the thick of things for the AL West. Still a chance, but they have been not playing great baseball. The Yankees take two of three in the Bronx. Oakland and Toronto. Toronto takes game one. Oakland took two of three. Blake took Toronto on that one. I took Oakland, so a dub there. Houston and Boston. We both took Boston. Houston actually ends up winning two of three in Fenway. In the National League, there's Pittsburgh versus the Dodgers. The Dodgers sweep the Pittsburgh Pirates. I did choose the Dodgers while Blake took Pittsburgh. Cincinnati and Milwaukee. I took Milwaukee. Blake took Cincinnati. Milwaukee ends up taking two of three there. San Diego and Miami. We both took San Diego. They end up sweeping Miami. Atlanta and Colorado. The Braves are struggling. They gave up seven runs in the eighth inning against the Rockies. Anything can happen in Coors Field, but they blow that series. The Rockies end up taking two of three at home. Then Philly and AZ, I ended up taking Philly. Arizona took, or Blake took Arizona. Not sure what happened that last game today, but I believe it was 3-1. If I might be mistaken on that one, but four game set. Arizona did take the series. Detroit and San Francisco. San Francisco takes two of two. Chicago versus Chicago. The Cubs take two of two. St. Louis and KC end up splitting 1-1. And the Mets and Seattle, a 3-0 sweep for the Mariners over the Mets. And the Angels and Washington, the Washington Nationals take two games in extra innings, while the Angels win the last game in salvage. So pretty strong week for me, 9-4-2. Blake went 7-6-2. Gained some games, so just gotta keep chipping away.
Yeah, that Cincinnati Milwaukee series was really good. Two really close games. Milwaukee won 1-0, then they won in extras. So saw a little bit of that series. Obviously, the Jays was a disaster today. It was 7-0 in the first inning off Chris Bassett. Saw a little bit of that Mets Seattle series today too. So yeah, that was good. Big sweep for Seattle.
Yeah, Phillies ended up taking game one of that series on Thursday night when we did our original predictions, and then Arizona proceeded to win three in a row. So
Yeah.
um, I knew it was a 3-1, just wasn't sure which games it was. But let's jump into this week. We'll start with both of our teams. It's the Toronto Blue Jays taking on the Angels in Anaheim. It'll be Francis versus Daniel, Gosman versus Fulmer, and Barrios versus Anderson. I do like on paper the Jays pitching better than the Angels. Um, but the Angels have over 500 record in the last 60 games. Blue Jays have played better since they called up the kids. I'm gonna go ahead and take my team. It's Angels Jays. Blake's a Jays fan. I'm an Angels fan. It would be no fun if if we
Yeah.
went with our brains and not our hearts. So we'll go with our hearts on this one. I'll take the Angels.
Yeah, I'll go the Jays. I don't know much about that Daniel, but Daniel and Francis, that's a toss up, to be honest. But yeah, Jays definitely have the edge. You were talking about Barrios' struggles against the Angels, historically. I mean, dating back to days with the Twins. Yeah, it should be an interesting series, to be honest. It could go either way. Vlad doesn't hit very good at Angel Stadium, but he's hot right now. Just had his 22 game hitting streak snapped today. So yeah, we'll see what happens there.
Yep. Houston versus Tampa. It'll be Valdez versus Bradley, Kikuchi versus Baz, and Blanco versus Littell. I'm gonna go ahead and go with Houston. They need these games. They're coming off a big series win against Boston. They're on an East Coast trip right now, so they're gonna be heading to Tampa. Yeah, I mean Kikuchi obviously has some um,
He owns
experience
the
pitching in
Rays.
the East. And Valdez is Framber Valdez. So I'm gonna go ahead and go with Houston. I think the pitching matchups do line up pretty nicely for both teams. But Houston's offense is just much better.
Yeah, even going back and looking at Kikuchi's, like there's a few starts when he was with Seattle that he just shoved against Tampa, and ever since he was in a Jays uniform, he just racks up strikeouts against them for some reason. But Yeah, I will definitely go with Houston here. The pitching definitely outweighs Tampa Bay.
Next up, we have the Rangers taking on the Red Sox. It'll be Malley versus Bayo, Urania versus Crawford, and TBD versus Hauk. I'm gonna go ahead and go with Boston here. Good series against Houston, but they lost 2 of 3. While Texas just hasn't been able to find those wins and string them together. So, yeah, obviously Jose Urania isn't a guy that I would be banking on to get you some dubs. TBD in game 3. Tyler Malley's what made maybe two starts now. Gonna be his third one, I believe. Might be
Yep.
his second one. But yeah, coming off an injury, Boston's pitching lines up a little bit better, and they're at home. So I'm gonna go with the Red Sox.
Yeah, Hauken Crawford has been good. Bayo just returned from the paternity list, didn't miss a start. Um, so yeah, he's been good. He's got a lot of wins this year, but his ERA is kind of high, so it's kind of been interesting to see his development this year. He's definitely showed some signs that he can be the guy that they paid him to be. But yeah, I will go with Boston here too.
Next up, we have the Royals taking on the Twins. It'll be Singer versus Lopez, Lugo versus TBD, and Reagans versus Ober. Cleveland lost 5 in a row last week before winning the back 2 games of that Minnesota series. Um, Minnesota almost had an opportunity to sweep and make this thing really interesting. Nonetheless, both these teams kind of have gained ground of late in the past week on Cleveland and made the division obtainable. So I like Kansas City better than Minnesota up to this point. Singer's been lights out, and then Lugo and Reagan's in the series. So I am going to go with Kansas City. It is in Minnesota, and they've been playing decent ball, but I like the Royals overall this season.
Yeah, that was definitely a big missed opportunity for Minnesota, especially when you win the first 2 games of that 4 game series. You win both of the doubleheader day one, and they just couldn't figure out the last 2 games there. But Kansas City, it's been an up and down little roller coaster the last few weeks here for them. But I love their pitching in this series, so I will go KC as well.
Next up, we have the Yankees taking on the Chicago White Sox. It'll be TBD versus Bush, Hill versus Cannon, and Cortez versus Martin. Uh, yeah, I mean, what is there to say? I mean, the White Sox are on pace to be the worst team in baseball history. So, with that said, I'm going with the Yankees. Interested. I'm more interested in when the White Sox win. Like, when they find ways to win, I'm like, all right, they're inching closer and closer to not being the worst. So,
What
um,
did you say? They have to win 14 games, 15 games?
something like that. I
Like
remember it
that's
was
some
like
crazy.
14 and 33 or something.
Yeah, but they're definitely on pace to be one of the worst of all time. Jazz Chisholm hit another couple homers over the weekend. He's up to 10 homers in the Yankee uniform, which is crazy. But yeah, I will go the Yankees here as well.
Yeah. I think it's 6 homers in the
Or
Yankees
maybe it's
uniform.
6, yeah, but it's
10 from the
or
break,
maybe
maybe.
it's 10 combined.
Yeah. So next up, we have the Mariners taking on the Tigers. It'll be Kirby versus Scooble, Wu versus TBD, and Miller versus TBD. Seattle's pitching much better than Detroit's. Though Detroit did beat them in Seattle in that series, the Mariners had to uh, win in extras or in a walk-off fashion, I should say. Mitch
Yep,
Haniger last week when
yep.
these two teams met. Um, you know what? I want to go Seattle. They did just sweep the Mets. Like Scooble in game 1.
Well, Detroit.
I'm gonna go with my brain. Obviously, the Mariners are a better team. I'm gonna go with the Mariners, even though I kind of want to go to Detroit just because they beat them last week. But
You
I'm
can
gonna go
take
with the
Detroit.
Mariners.
You can
I'm gonna
take
take the
Detroit.
Mariners.
Obviously it's big that they don't have to face Castillo. He was gross tonight on Sunday Night Baseball. Against the Mets. He had made a couple people look pretty silly with that sinker. But yeah, I'll go Seattle. Seattle's the new additions have been good. Rosarena's OPS is almost 1,000 since he's been in a Mariners uniform. Justin Turner's been in pretty solid with them, and Garcia's been solid on the back end of that pen too. So I will go with Seattle.
Next up, we have the Braves taking on the Giants. It'll be Sale versus Snell, Morton versus Harrison, Holmes versus Ray, and Freed versus Webb. Nice little 4 game series here. We are going to see Blake Snell in this series. We are going to see Robbie Ray. We're going to see Webb. Uh, I do like how it lines up for San Francisco. Atlanta's been scuffling a little bit. But with that said, I am going to go with Atlanta in this four-game series. Realistically, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a split here. A lot of good pitching matchups. We just got to see. The Braves got to get going. They got to get going quick.
Before I make my prediction, Braves lost 21 games. They started with a 6 game losing streak, then they won 7 of 8, and now they've lost 7 of 8. So it's just been like up and down, and just stretches of losing, stretches of winning. They have to figure it out, man. Otherwise, they might be in a little trouble here because the wild card race is getting pretty tight, and they don't figure it out, they might be in trouble. But I'm going to go San Francisco here. I'm with you. Probably could be a split, but the way that Atlanta's playing, I don't know if I can trust them right now. So I'm going to go with San Francisco, and they're at home too. So that kind of based into my decision.
Next up, we have Pittsburgh taking on San Diego. It'll be Gonzalez versus Musgrove, Ortiz versus King, and Keller versus Perez. The Padres have been one of the best teams in baseball since the trade deadline. And they also swept this Pittsburgh Pirates team in Pittsburgh. Obviously, no Skeens here. Uh, Musgrove going, King going. I like San Diego's chances. I'm going to take the Padres.
Yeah, I have been riding Pittsburgh's way for a while, and they've been costing me games in the standings. Yeah, I'm gonna go with San Diego here. San Diego, hottest team in baseball. Either them or Arizona. You could take your pick on that one. Two NL West teams just red hot right now, and I will go San Diego.
Next up, we have the Dodgers taking on Milwaukee. It'll be Kershaw versus Peralta, Stone versus Montas, Flaherty versus Savali, and to be determined versus Myers. This one is in Milwaukee. Yeah, Dodgers been playing pretty well. Obviously got Freeman back. Betts is on his way. It might even be in this series. I know it's on a rehab, I believe. So Tommy Edmonds on a rehab assignment as well. So
Muncie's on a rehab
Dodgers
too.
yeah, Dodgers are going to be pretty stacked here quick.
Yeah.
With that said, I am going to go with the Dodgers. They've been playing good ball and they're coming off a sweep. So, um, but Milwaukee, I could see it. But realistically, I'm either going Dodgers 3 or 4 or split here.
They lost River Ryan too to an arm injury. That was tough to
Uh,
see. You never like to see guys go down with injuries like that. But I'm going to go the Dodgers here too. Milwaukee's at home. They've been a pretty decent team at home, and they're pretty consistently offensively. But it's going to be interesting to see how this lineup's constructed once all these guys comes back because there's only a certain amount of spots that you can put guys in, right? And it's interesting to see that they're moving Mookie back to right field when he comes back. I
yeah.
think that makes the most sense. That's his natural position, right? It's obviously nice that he can show that he can play second and short in a pinch if you need him to go there. But I mean, he's got one of the best arms in the league, and he's a lethal weapon in right. So I think it'll be best that he goes back.
Yeah, I mean they also added a ton of infielders in Rosario and Edmund. They still have Kike who can float around the infield. They have Rojas, so
Yeah,
then Muncy will be back. So I think they really went after that infield depth, and obviously you have Gavin Lux as well. So yeah, I mean have Mookie go play the outfield and stack that thing up. So
yeah.
next up we have the Cardinals taking on Cincinnati. It'll be Gray versus Abbott, Fetty versus Green, and Gibson versus Spears. We go ahead and go with St. Louis. Um, I was riding St. Louis up until last week when I took Kansas City. Ended up being a split anyway.
Mhm.
So, I get a second shot here. I am going to go with St. Louis. Cincinnati's been playing a tad better of late. But St. Louis is right in the thick of things and they need wins and these are big games. Plus they have their ace and Sonny Gray going. So I'm gonna go with the Cards.
Yeah, I am going to go with the cards as well. Pardon me. They're kind of hovering that wild card position. It's going to be tough going against Green there. Fetty's been okay since he's come over in that trade with the White Sox, and Gibson's just a reliable guy. He can eat some innings for you. So the fact they got Gray going in the series kind of leaned me that way as well.
Next up, we have Miami taking on Philly. It'll be Palazzo versus Phillips and to be determined versus to be determined. Is this a two gamer?
Yeah, two gamer. Yeah,
Hmm,
it's weird.
interesting.
So weird.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially a division rival. But
yeah,
yeah, I'm gonna take Philly nonetheless. I mean, obviously one of the best teams, if not the best team, in baseball. And yeah, Miami is not. So I'm gonna take the Phillies.
yeah. I'm interested to see if this was like a planned 2 game series or if it was like a part of a something makeup because you usually don't see just 2 game series against your division rival, like you said. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna go Philly as well.
All right. Next up, we have Colorado taking on Arizona. We Quantrill versus Fott, Gomber versus Rodriguez, and Gordon versus Montgomery. We noted that the Padres have been one of the best teams in baseball over the past month. Well, Arizona's been keeping pace with them. They just took 3 or 4 from the Phillies. They're red hot. I'm gonna go ahead and go with Arizona in this series. It's a no-brainer, especially against the Rockies, who are one of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah, they're a fun team to watch right now, and Corbin Carroll's really the power strokes coming back for him since the All Star break, which is really awesome to see because he's the stir of that offense at the top, and he's hitting the ball gap to gap now, spraying the ball over the field, which is good, and he's stealing a lot of bags right now. So yeah, I'll go Arizona as well.
Next up, we have the interleague matchups, and the first one will be Chicago taking on Cleveland. It'll be Imanaga versus Lively, Assad versus TBD, and Tyon versus Cobb. I do like Chicago's pitching a tad better in this series, but Cleveland has been consistent all year, while the Cubs have not. So I am gonna go with Cleveland, but they haven't been playing their best ball of late. So hopefully they turn around here and get me a dub.
Yeah, I'll take my chances with Imanaga and Tyon. They've, I think, Cobb. Obviously, this is only his second start of the season, and I don't know who started in that second game. So, I went with the Cubs in this one.
Next up, we have Oakland taking on the Mets. It'll be Stripling versus Blackburn, Estes versus Peterson, and Spence versus Quintana. The Mets, they've had their highs and their lows. Obviously, going up against uh, Seattle's pitching this past weekend, to me, their offense isn't overwhelming. Like they have their moments where they get these big hits and they find their way. But every time I kind of turn on a Mets game, it seems like they can't hit against really good teams. So with that said, this Oakland pitching staff is not a really good pitching staff, but they have been playing really, really good baseball over the past 20 to 30 games, for their standard, I should say, at least. While the Mets have been, it is what it is. Stripling, that's going to be tough. Stripling versus Blackburn is going to be tough in this series. I'm doubling down. I took Oakland last week against Toronto. It worked out. I'm going to take Oakland here against the Mets.
Yeah, they got some nice little pieces offensively. Bladay's been okay. Rooker's obviously the main guy there, and that Lawrence Butler's actually really fun to watch. I enjoyed watching him in that series against the Jays. Hit a couple homers, hit a couple doubles. So and he's got that speed at that top of the lineup. But I can't go Oakland here. I gotta go the Mets here. They're at home. I like that you're doubling down. I like that you got the balls to do that. It's good. But yeah, I think the Mets will win.
All right. And lastly, we have the Washington Nationals taking on the Baltimore Orioles. It'll be Irvin versus Rogers and Hers versus Kramer. It's a two-gamer. Uh, but pretty much Battle of DC, you can say. Baltimore's right on that borderline. So nice
Mhm.
little crosstown rivalry. But I'm going to go ahead and go with Baltimore here for obvious reasons. They're the better baseball team, and a lot more star power. So no surprise I'm going with those.
Yeah, it's interesting to see Rogers velo right now. He was up in the 94, 95, and his last start he was at 90. So I'm not sure if it's just he just didn't have it that day, but that's definitely something to keep an eye on. His velo was down pretty good his last outing, but yeah, I will go Baltimore here as well.
All right, that's going to do it for this one. In review, I have the Angels, Houston, Boston, Kansas City, New York, Atlanta, San Diego, LA, St. Louis, Philly. Also have Seattle in that Detroit series. I have Arizona, Cleveland, Oakland, and Baltimore, while Blake has Toronto, Houston, Boston, Kansas City, New York, Seattle, San Francisco, San Diego, LA, St. Louis, Philly, Arizona, Chicago, New York, and Baltimore. If you like this video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. As always, we appreciate you guys for listening and watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Later.